Mantras of our Divine Mother. Our Divine Mother says the soul cannot think the Divine, but knows Him with certitude. With my love and blessings, says our Divine Mother. Words of our Lord Sri Aurobindo and our Divine Mother from the collective works of our Lord and Sri Aurobindo and the Mother. Compilations by A.S. Dalal, book Living Words, page 58. Topic: Light on the Path. Subtopic: Preparing the Path. Our Divine Mother says, have you never had the feeling in your life that you were on the way towards something? No? One does not have the impression that when he is born, he begins to set his feet on a road which is going to lead him by a curve through his whole life. That's the image. So, if you take the path which must lead you to a spiritual realization, well, it means that all your actions are deliberately going to be directed to this goal. So, our Lord Sri Aurobindo says that there is a bit of the way which is under the control of reason, and that reason, if you follow it, helps you to go forward here without making mistakes too often. For it is quite remarkable that in life you start without knowing anything, and that at each step you take have to learn, and that at each step you take you have to learn, and that usually you come to the end of the path without having learned anything very much, because too often you make mistakes and you have nothing to guide you. Our Divine Mother says, ordinary people enter life without even knowing what it is to live, and at each step they have to learn how to live. And before knowing what they want to realize, they must at least know how to walk, as we teach a tiny little child how to walk. In life, one has to learn how to live. Which people know how to live? And it is through experience, through mistakes, through all kinds of misfortunes and troubles of every sort, that gradually one begins to be what is called reasonable. That is, when one has made a mistake a certain number of times and has had troublesome consequences, from this mistake one learns not to make it again. But there is a moment when the brain is developed enough and you can use the reason well. Reason can help you to reduce the number of these mistakes, to teach you to walk the path without stumbling too often. Our Divine Mother says the immense majority of human beings are born, live, and die without knowing why this has happened to them. They take it. It is just like that. They are born, they live. They're born, they live, they have what they call their joys and sorrows, and they come to the end and go away. They came in and went out without learning anything. This indeed is the immense majority. There is among them a small number of people called the elite, who try to know what has happened to them, why they are upon earth, and why all that happens to them happens. Then, among these, There are some who use their reason, find a way of walking properly on the path much faster than the others. These are reasonable beings. Our Divine Mother says, now there is a big handful of people who are born with the feeling that there is something else to find in life, a higher purpose to life, that there is an aim, and they strive to find it. So for these, the path goes beyond reason to regions which they have to explore either with or without help as chance takes them, and they must then discover the higher worlds. But there are not many of this kind. I do not know how many of these there are now in the world, but I have the impression that they could still be counted. So for these, it depends on when they begin. Our Divine Mother says now there are beings, I think, who are born and whose rational period of life may begin very early when they are young, and it may last for a very short time, and then they are almost immediately ready to set out on new and unexplored paths towards the higher realities. But in order to set out on these paths without fear and without any danger, one must have organized his being with the help of the reason around the highest center he consciously possesses, and organized it in such a way that it is inwardly in his control, and he has not to say at every moment, ah, I have done this, I don't know why. Ah, that happened to me, I don't know why. And always it is I do not know, I do not know, I don't know. And as long as it is like that, the path is somewhat dangerous. Our Divine Mother says, only when one does what he wants, knows what he wants, does what he wants, and is able to direct himself with certitude without being tossed about by the hazards of life, then one can go forward on the suprarational paths fearlessly, unhesitatingly, and with the least danger. But one need not be very old for this to happen. One can begin very young. Even a child of 5 can already make use of reason to control himself. I know that. There is enough mental organization in the being in these two little tots who look so spontaneous and irresponsible. There is enough cerebral organization for them to organize themselves, their life, their nature, their moments, actions, thoughts with reason, says our Divine Mother. Next topic, the call and the consecration. Lord Aurobindo says, all yoga is in its nature a new birth. It is a birth out of the ordinary mental materialized life of man into a higher spiritual consciousness, a greater, diviner being. No yoga can be successfully undertaken and followed unless there is a strong awakening to the necessity of that larger spiritual existence. The soul that is called to this deep and vast inward change may arrive in different ways to the initial departure. It may come to it by its own natural development, which has been leading it unconsciously towards the awakening. It may reach it through the influence of a religion or an attraction of a philosophy. It may approach it by a slow illumination or leap to it by a sudden touch or shock. It may be pushed or led to it by the pressure of the outward consciousness or by an inward necessity, by a single word that breaks the seals of the mind, or by long reflection, by the distant example of one who has trod the path, or by contact and daily influence. According to the nature and the circumstance, the call will come. But in whatever way it comes, says our Lord, there must be a decision of the mind and the will, and as its result, a complete and effective self consecration. The acceptance of a new spiritual idea, force, an upward orientation in the being, an illumination, a turning or conversion seized on by the will and the heart's aspiration. This is the momentous act which contains as in a seed all the results that the yoga has to give. The mere idea or intellectual seeking of something higher, however strongly grasped by the mind's interest, is ineffective unless it is seized on by the heart as the one thing desirable and by the will as the one thing to be done. For the truth of the Spirit has not to be merely thought but to be lived, and to live it demands a unified single mindedness of the being. So great a change as is contemplated by the yoga is not effected by a divided will or by a small portion of the energy or a hesitating mind. He who seeks the divine must consecrate himself to God and to God only. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says, if the change comes suddenly and decisively by an overflowing influence, there is no further essential or lasting difficulty. The joy of choice flows upon the thought or is a simultaneous. The choice follows upon the thought or is simultaneous with it, and the self consecration follows upon the choice. The feet are already set upon the path, even if they seem at first to wander uncertainly, and even though the path itself may be only obscurely seen and the knowledge of the goal may be imperfect. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says, the secret teacher, the inner guide, is already at work, though he may not yet manifest himself or may not appear in the person of his human representative. Whatever difficulties and hesitations may ensue, Whatever difficulties and hesitations may ensue, they cannot eventually prevail against the power of the experience that has turned the current of the life. The call, once decisive, stands. The thing that has been born cannot eventually be stifled. Even if the force of circumstances prevents a regular pursuit or a full practical self consecration from the first, still the mind has taken its bent and persists and returns with an ever increasing effect upon its leading preoccupation. There is an ineluctable persistence of the inner being, and against it, circumstances are in the end powerless, and no weakness in the nature can for long be an obstacle. But this is not always the manner of the commencement. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says the sadhaka is often led gradually, and there is a long space between the first turning of the mind and the full ascent of the nature to the thing towards which it turns. There may be at first be only a vivid intellectual interest, a forcible attraction towards the idea, and some imperfect form of practice. Or perhaps there is an effort not favored by the whole nature, a decision or a turn imposed by an intellectual influence or dictated by personal affection and admiration for someone who is himself consecrated and devoted to the highest. In such cases, says our Lord, a long period of preparation may be necessary before there comes the irrevocable consecration, and in some instances it may not come. There may be some advance There may be a stronger effort, even much purification and many experiences other than those that are central or supreme, but the life will either be spent in preparation, a certain stage having been reached, the mind pushed by an insufficient driving force may rest content at the limit of the effort possible to it. Or they may even be a recoil to the lower life, what is called the ordinary parlance of integral yoga, a fall from the path. This lapse happens because there is a defect at the very center. The intellect has been interested, the heart attracted, the will has strung itself to the effort, but the whole nature has not been taken captive by the divine. It is only acquiesced in the interest, the attraction, or the endeavor. There has been an experiment, perhaps even an eager experiment, but not a total self giving to an imperative need of the soul or an unforsakable or to an unforsakable ideal. Even such imperfect yoga has not been wasted, for no upward effort is made in vain, even if it falls in the present or arrives at some preparatory stage or preliminary realization, it has yet determined the soul's future. But if we desire to make the most of the opportunity that this life gives us, if we wish to respond adequately to the call we have received and to attain the goal we have accomplished, we have glimpsed, not merely advance a little towards it, it is essential that there should be an entire self giving. The secret of success in yoga, says our Lord Sri Aurobindo, the secret of success in integral yoga is to regard it not as one of the aims to be pursued in life, but as the one and only aim, not as an important part of life, but as a whole of life, says our Lord Sri Aurobindo. Next topic, page 139. The divine gives himself. Question: Sweet Mother, what is meant by the divine gives himself? For this, our Divine Mother says, it means exactly this, that the more you give yourself, the more you give yourself, the more you have the experience. It is not just a feeling or impression or sensation, it is a total experience that the more you give yourself to the divine, the more he is with you, totally, constantly, at every minute, in all your thoughts, all your needs, and that there's no aspiration which does not receive an immediate answer, and you have the sense of a complete, constant intimacy, of a total nearness. It is as though you carried, as though the divine were all the time with you. You walk, he walks with you. You sleep, and he sleeps with you. You eat, and he eats with you. You think, and he thinks with you. You love, and he is the love you have. But for this, one must give himself entirely, totally, exclusively, reserve nothing, keep nothing for himself, and not keep back anything, not disperse anything also. The least little thing in your being which is not given to the divine is a waste. It is the wasting of your joy, something that lessens your happiness by that much, and all that you don't give to the divine is as though you were holding it back in the way of the possibility of the divine's giving himself to you. You don't feel him close to yourself, constantly with you, because you do not belong to him, because you belong to hundreds of other things and people in your thought, In your action, in your feelings, impulses, there are millions of things which you do not give Him, and that is why you don't feel Him always with you, because all these things are so many screens and walls between Him and you. But if you give Him everything, if you keep back nothing, He will be constantly and totally with you in all that you do, in all that you think, in all that you feel, always at each moment. But for this, you must give yourself absolutely, keep back nothing. Each little thing that you hold back is a stone you put down to build a wall between the divine and yourself. And then later you complain, "Oh, I do not feel him," says our divine mother.